Hello everyone and welcome to My Tennis Journey, where we aim to bring compelling tennis journeys to life. As you're listening today, it would be amazing if you'd hit subscribe or follow. It's free, you know. Over the past 20 years, Spanish tennis has established itself as the world leader when it comes to producing world-class players and establishing world-class academies. Led by coaches like Pato Alvarez and Luis Bugera and players like Nadal, Muguruza and Alcaraz, as well as foreign stars who have trained in Spain like Andy Murray, Spain has been a leading force in world tennis. It's little wonder, therefore, that players and parents have headed to Spain to aid their players' development at the host of amazing academies. But what are the secrets of Spanish tennis? And with powerhouses like France and Italy emerging, is Spain still as dominant as it once was? And if not, why not? Today we will find out from an absolute expert in the Spanish game, an American coach who was so passionate about Spanish tennis that he bought a plane ticket as a young man and headed to the academies of Spain, where he became friends with the likes of Pato Alvarez, Luis Bugera, and a host of other top coaches. I'm passionate about Spanish tennis. Our boys have trained at the Ferreros Academy near Alicante, and when I studied for my level 3 coaching qualification, I took the RPT course, which is a Spanish organisation. I also bought a book by today's guest called The Secrets of Spanish Tennis, and I used the drills in it to drive my coaching. The book is now newly updated with new material, including a chapter on Tony Nadal. And today, the author, the coach, the social media influencer that is Chris Lewit is going to share the 6 secrets of Spanish tennis with you. Welcome to the show, Chris Lewit.
Thank you.
Chris, not everyone's going to be on video watching this, but you've got an intriguing background. I can see some copies of your book. I can see giant tennis rackets. I can see a broken tennis racket, I think. Whereabouts are you?
I'm at my club. This is my home in Manchester, Vermont. It's an incredible ski town in the mountains of Vermont. I'm a New York City kid, born and raised in New York City. So this is not far from New York City. It's about 3.5 hours north of New York City. But basically, I'm a city kid, and I bought this club in the mountains, and everyone's coming to train with me here at this high performance center. Is very exciting. My home.
Mate, I love it. And I love it. And, you know, I can't wait. I know you're an American man with an incredible passion for Spanish tennis and the success of Spanish tennis. And as someone who, you know, I'm not quite at your level, but I'm very passionate about it. I can't wait to talk about it, but it's my tennis journey. How did your tennis journey begin, Chris?
I fell in love with tennis at a young age, and I was a national level junior. I went to play Division I college. I played number 1 for Cornell, and I tried my hand on the lower level pro circuit, but unfortunately got injured. So it's kind of a big probably the biggest failure in my life. I just wanted to be a pro, and I never made it. So like many coaches, the story is I got hurt, you know, I got injured, and that's what started my journey in coaching. And it turns out I had a gift for coaching. I had no plan to become a coach. So I just wanted to play. But now I love my life. You know, sometimes those experiences, the failures lead to something greater. And so now I'm on the court. I get to hit every day. I get to enjoy being on the court and sharing my knowledge with my students. And it's a great joy. It's a passion. This is my passion. So sometimes things turn out unexpectedly better than you want, but that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to be a pro. I wanted to be on the big stage as a player, and now I'm just behind the scenes building the young champions.
Mate, I feel like it's a good job you're not a pro player, because, you know, the truth of the matter is you're a coach, you're an author, several books, you're a social media influencer, you're a dad to 4 children. the fact is, Chris, you wouldn't have time. You wouldn't have time for anything else in this life of yours. But mate, how did you get to this point then? You know, like where you're, you know, the Spanish tennis. How did you get firstly involved? You're a New Yorker. How did the love for Spanish tennis grow?
Yeah, everybody asks me that. I'm not Spanish. I have an incredible curiosity and thirst for knowledge and just learning. I love to learn every day. That's why I'm going back to school right now for kinesiology and biomechanics. And you know, 20 odd years ago, Spain was doing very well. They had 14 or 15 players in the top 100. And it was the talk of the town. You know, everybody wanted to know, like, what are they doing over there? And I went to a conference with Jay Berger, who's a famous American player and a top high performance coach. And he gave us talk about how the USTA had sent a study group to Spain. This was about maybe 2004, 2005, so about 20 years ago. And they had determined that the reason that Spain's doing so well is that they work really hard. That was his conclusion. Jay Berger said they work like animals. They work really hard, and that's about it. You know, we didn't notice anything special over there besides that. And that piqued my curiosity. I was just an attendee at a workshop, high performance workshop, and I said, "There's no way. There's got to be more to the story." And so a year later, I booked a flight there, and I paid my way to go study there. And I've probably made 30 or more trips since, you know, in the last 20 years. And I brought my family. I mean, many summers we lived in Barcelona for a month at a time. I brought the whole family over.
Love it. I love it. I mean, I'm going to come back to that journey into Spain, but I've got to ask you, like, can you confirm or deny the fact that Spanish juniors, Spanish players work like animals?
They do. By and large, I don't want to reveal the secrets yet of Spanish tennis, but they work like animals. They're very hard workers, and the coaches have an expectation of hard work, and that's part of the fabric of the tennis culture there, for sure.
I'm a big believer in life that you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. It's a back to the future line, you know, but you can make things happen in life. How did you've got this flight to Spain. At that point, did you have contacts? Did you just turn up? Like, I know you know everyone in every academy now. How did you make it happen?
I have some great stories from those early years, those early study trips. I don't speak great Spanish. My Spanish is very broken. I can understand at this point in time, I can understand Spanish pretty well. I have trouble holding a good conversation. So I went there and I knew no Spanish. I knew nothing. And I basically I took a certification course at the Sanchez Casal Academy, and I went for a couple weeks, and I stayed longer, but there was a 2-week certification course just you had to pay for it. It was expensive, and the flight was very expensive, and you had to take off from work. You know, I couldn't work during that time, and I left my wife, and I think we met at that time, we may have had the little baby too, even. And I went to the Sanchez Casal Academy. It was an amazing experience. I took the course, but I did a lot of extra work. Every day I studied with Pato Alvarez on the court. William Pato Alvarez was there, the legend, the godfather, grandfather of Spanish tennis. He was there every day coaching. And I would do the regular certification course, and then I would just sit on his court and watch him teach the rest of the day. It was an incredible experience, and he was very generous to me. He answered all my questions that I had. We sat at the lunch table together, and he let me sit in on all his private lessons. It was incredible for a young coach learning. It was amazing. And then, so what I did, Rob, you'll appreciate this. So I was there, and during that time, I sent an email over to the Bugera Academy, where Luis Bugera he's this other larger than life figure in Spanish tennis, father of Spanish tennis. And I said to them, I was just inquiring, would I be able to come and learn for your methodology? I'm over here at Sanchez Casal, and Pato Alvarez says that he's the greatest coach in the world. And they took the bait, and Luis Bruguera personally invited me over there and took me under his wing and taught me his whole method there on that same trip. And he wanted to clear the record. He wanted to be very clear that he was actually responsible for Spanish tennis, and he was one of the greatest. So he would never claim that he was one of the greatest, but he wanted to make it clear that he was very responsible for the success of Spain, not necessarily Pato Alvarez, because Pato Alvarez he's passed away. He had a very big ego and really always claimed that he was the greatest coach in the world.
Amazing. I love this though, because if people aren't familiar with these names, these are absolute giants of the Spanish game. They are absolute giants of the world game. Andy Murray, for example, will speak very, very highly of Pato Alvarez. He is a man who is quoted to this day with his sayings. And so to be under his wing, but then go to another world famous coach. This to me just says, come on, guys, in this world, if we want to achieve stuff, we can make it happen. And what a way to make it happen.
Yes, and I mentor many young coaches, and I always tell them, follow your curiosity and go for it. This is a great story, great example where I can't tell you how many people I've met who say, oh, I'd love to go to Spain, but it's too expensive. I'm going to miss work. I don't know anyone there. I don't know. And I just did it. Like I went for it, and it paid over years, it paid off, and I kept going and I just built up levels and layers of knowledge. And eventually it culminated in that book in 2014. I decided to write and get that book published. That was really the seminal work on Spain. Like nobody had really brought it all together and explained what they do there.
I love this. And this is where, just to bring my sort of journey into it, when I decided to become a full-time tennis coach, and I knew about the Spanish ways and I really liked what I heard, but I decided that that's what I wanted to study. So for my level 3 coaching, I did the RPT, which is a Spanish organization. I did their course, and as a result of that, I bought The Secrets of Spanish Tennis, which is the book I was talking about in the introduction, but it's been updated now with new material. So is even better than the original. I also bought a book that Chris has written on tennis technique. But yeah, in terms of the Spanish way, it's one where I've been a big fan of it. Our lads, we've got 2 lads who play, and our daughter plays too. But the boys actually went to the Ferreros Academy near Alicante. I know I'm very aware of Spain having this amazing track record in tennis, in pro tennis, consistently producing top male and female players, completely out punching other countries in terms of top 100 players, and being proud about the fact that they're doing so, and doing so without the budget of the countries that reap the financial benefits of hosting a Grand Slam. So I very much recommend that you buy a copy of The Secrets of Spanish Tennis. But for now, Chris, come on, bring it to life for us. What are the secrets of Spanish tennis? What's the first one that you would like to reveal to us?
Sure, and that's the subject of the book. The number one secret is the movement. In Spain, they're obsessed with moving fluidly, with balance, with agility, with precision, and they spend day after day after day working on receiving the ball with perfect position. So it's all about the positioning and receiving, developing a peaceful and harmonious relationship with the ball. As the ball's arriving, they spend many, many hours per day training the reception of the ball and getting in good position to hit the ball. And that is their hallmark. And that's what the Spanish players are all famous for: the way they move, the way they receive the ball, the way they're balanced and in position to hit the ball. In Spain, they say receive the ball. That's a common term in Spain. And then the hitting the ball is the sending the ball. So they focus on the reception and then the sending of the ball. And in other countries, sometimes when they talk about footwork, it's like the technique of footwork, like they have a very precise system of how to take this step and that step. And that's not necessarily the case in Spain. It's more of a bigger picture of how the players move and adjust to the ball, not necessarily like a strict, rigid way of moving the feet. Although it's a little more complicated because Pato Pato Alvarez himself did have a very strict footwork approach. It was called the double rhythm, which is a side shuffle, diagonal side shuffle. But by and large, now in Spain, the way they move is not like a rigid footwork technique. It's just it's the way they receive the ball in good position and balance.
Yeah. And to bring that to life, Chris, because I know you spend a heck of a lot of time on court, and of course the methodologies that you are using are very much informed by the Spanish way. But to bring that to life for tennis parents, tennis coaches who are listening, what does that involve from an on-court drill perspective? How is movement so central?
Sure, I talk about this a lot in the book. We have a lot of the new book has a lot more drills than the first edition. A lot of different drills from different legends in Spain, and a lot of them are in the footwork chapter. And essentially, they believe in this comes from Pato Alvarez. They believe in cleaning the technique. Cleaning is a word they use in Spain a lot for the movement and the balance and the body control. So they're kind of obsessed with the way you control your body. They like to see a good posture with every shot. So no falling over, no loss of balance, stable head, quiet head, an upright posture as you strike the ball, and a good relationship with the ball. Relationship with the ball means the distance from the ball. So every exercise they do is working on that, whether they're doing a hand-fed drill, and they do a lot of hand-fed basket drills in Spain, whether they're doing a live ball drill, or the coaches are watching the kids play matches. That's going to be a common refrain. They're going to tell players to move with balance, to set up for the ball with good body control, and to accelerate with good body control. We can talk about acceleration also later. And so the way you would clean a player is you do daily hand feeding. You might do the X drill, which is a very famous drill in Spain. You might do other varieties of footwork drills, and you're just constantly working on receiving the ball well, being in perfect balance as you accelerate, basically controlling your body. Tony Nadal has a great saying that if you can't control your body, you can't control the ball. And controlling the ball is essential in Spain because they believe in being very, very consistent players.
It's a great way of bringing it to life. And yeah, if you can't control the body, you can't control the ball. So yeah, fascinating. Okay, so movement. What next, Chris? What's the next secret?
I would say, and in my book I talk about it, we were alluding to it before, consistency. So you have the footwork and the control of the body, and when you can receive the ball well, it's going to allow you to be more consistent. Obviously, you need to have the handwork, which is the stroke, but so the footwork gives you the base, the foundation of consistency. So when you can move with balance and gracefulness and receive the ball with good position, and then when you can accelerate with good control of your body, you're going to be able to hit the ball more consistently in the court. And so that's an obsession in Spain. Not making mistakes, not making sloppy errors, unforced errors is another obsession. So you have the footwork, and then you combine that with the consistency, absolute obsession. So sometimes to their detriment, that's been a criticism of Spanish coaches sometimes, that you go there and maybe they always tell you not to make a mistake where you may feel that you don't want to go for too much. You might become too conservative a player. For example, that's one of the reasons why Murray broke up with Pato Alvarez. When Pato Alvarez was coaching Murray, they had a big disagreement, and Pato Alvarez wanted him to play very, very defensively and consistently and make basically play like Borg. And Murray wanted to be a little more proactive, and they had a big clash about that at that time, which was one of the reasons they broke up. So that can be a criticism as well as a positive in Spain, a negative and a positive. But if you go to Spain, historically, you will learn to be solid. And that's a word they use a lot in Spain. You will learn to be able to hit 5, 10, 15 balls in a row with good footwork, and not lose a match. And Luis Bugera talks about that all the time. He says, if you make balls and you don't miss and you're consistent, if you are solid, you can't lose. You might not win, but you can't lose. You won't beat yourself. And so that's like a very big refrain in Spain, very common theme you see all around Spain.
It's really interesting in that, so We have an 11-year-old, we have a 14-year-old, and certainly the kind of feeling I get, my interpretation is that at our younger one's age, you can kind of get away with what is called moonballing or hacking or just not making mistakes. But I get the feeling that by the older one's age, so 14, it's far more, if you do that, you will be hit through because the players are getting bigger, more powerful, and they're going to put the ball past you if you're just simply consistent. From your point of view, Chris, how have you taken the importance of consistency? But I'm guessing you don't want to be producing what we would call moon ballers, i.e., very high and loopy shots. Where have you got to in that regard with your junior players?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a moment, but that's historically how Spanish players used to play, like in the 60s and the 70s, before the big revolution in Spanish tennis in the 80s and 90s, where they had the Spanish Armada arrive. The Spanish players were often derogatorily called pushers. And
Yeah,
what Luis Bruguera did is he transformed the whole training system in Spain, and he focused on hitting the ball with power and acceleration. And he has a lot of famous acceleration drills. That, by the way, is one of the secrets of Spanish tennis, is the acceleration. So it's not the idea of just getting the ball in, which would be pushing, like you're describing. You
yeah,
combine that. It's a combination of being consistent, but at maximum racket speed. And maximum racket speed is a huge focus in Spain. They want the players to accelerate and hit a heavy ball and to hit with power. So it's not just getting the ball in, it's getting the ball in and using your maximum acceleration, but you need to accelerate with control, with body control, which is what we talked about earlier. You have to learn to accelerate with control of your body. And that is actually the technical journey of every player. Any young player who wants to be a pro someday or a top college player, they have to learn to hit the ball harder and harder and harder and not lose control of their swing and body.
love it. So there we have the ingredients that are starting to come together. We've got the importance of movement. We've got the fact that you need to be able to keep the ball in the court. It is a game of mistakes after all, the majority of points. However, you need to be able to do that with controlled aggression. So, and that's the racket speed. And so again, bringing that to life, Chris, how do you teach the importance of the racket speed to make sure that you've got this power to go with your control?
Right. So that's what I work on with all of my juniors here. We work on the elements that you said. Oh, I want to have fluid movers, graceful movers, beautiful balance. I want to have players who are steady, and then I slowly try to build their racket speed. I basically use the Bugera system. The Bugera method is a wonderful method of drills. I've done many, many videos about Luis Bugera's methodology, and I really believe he's a genius coach. He has a number of hand-fed drills and racket-fed drills where you work on your acceleration, usually in rapid succession. So the drills are very fast, tossed very quickly, and you overload the player, and you develop that you force them to accelerate and to get stronger and to build more whip in their stroke. And I'm a big believer in those exercises. And then it comes through constant repetition. If you're doing live ball work, if the player is playing a match or doing a live ball exercise, it's a constant reinforcement where you say, no, you push there. I need you to be more aggressive there with your racket speed. Doesn't mean more aggressive with your margin. It means more aggressive with your racket speed. That's really key, because sometimes you can swing very, very fast, but it's a safe ball with margin and clearance above the net, good top spin. It doesn't mean going for the lines or hitting very, very close to the net.
Brilliant. And one of the reasons I'm smiling so much is it's just come back to me because alongside the book, and I don't know if you're doing it with this volume, there was a lot of videos for every chapter. You did a load of videos, and as when I was new to the coaching world, that was kind of like as important to the book was the videos where, for example, there was a lot of drive volleys where you would be feeding drive volleys and you'd be accelerating through it at speed, which was all about a racket speed drill. In the new book, have you got the videos too?
Yes, exactly. In fact, that's a project that I'm working on right now. concurrently. So over the next few months, we'll be releasing each video for. There's over 45 drills in the new book, more than ever before. So, and we're actually trying to produce them with a better quality than last time. 10 years ago, I just made the video and put it on the website or YouTube. And now we're trying to make the videos with a higher quality for all the readers. And also for anyone, even for people who don't buy the book, they can still access the drills on my YouTube channel. So we actually are working on that right now, getting all the videos out. So if you have the book now and you're reading it, just please try to be patient. We're trying to make the videos really good and get them out over the next few months. But yeah, and that drill you mentioned with the swinging racket speed, swinging volley with racket speed, that is a Luis Bugera drill.
Yeah, come on, man. And I've got to say, I know the world's getting polished in terms of we're all creators and content creators, but I loved the fact that I felt I was kind of an eye into the world of the lessons you were giving. Do you know what I mean? This was not polished, but it was quality lessons with players who wanted to learn. And as a result, I think the lessons I gave out were better. So yeah, thanks, man.
I'm glad that helped. That's awesome. That's the whole point. To learn from just a book, it's not the best way. It's not the optimal way to learn coaching or drills or tennis teaching. You coaches learn great when you have both resources. You have a video, and you also have the words on a page. It's better for the learning for coaches and anyone who's reading, or for players too.
Mate, it brings it to life. It makes it real. I understood it better when I could see it. But yeah, come on. So we've had movement, we've had control, we've had racket speed, the things that the Spanish system have at their core. But are there more things at the core? Is there another one you'd bring to the table?
Yeah, there's 6 pillars from the book, 6 primary drivers of Spanish success. The 4th one is, because we're going through all of them now, which is great for the listeners, is defense. And in Spain, they always work on the good defense. They expect that all players should be able to defend well. And that's not the case in every country, in every system. So in Spain, if you go to Spain, even if you're an offensive player, if you play like Alcaraz, so you have great offensive weapons, he's a fascinating player in terms of he's an evolution to the Spanish game. He's not a pusher. He's very proactive. And I think he's the new type of Spanish player, by the way. But you have to learn a good defense. Alcaraz can defend very well. It's a great example of, like I call, Spanish tennis 2.0. He does everything that the old Spanish players could do, but he has more weapons and more tools to attack, and he comes forward more. So he's just like the ultimate example of the new Spanish tennis type of player. And so there's a lot of exercises that they work on in Spain where they put the player at a disadvantage to start the point, where you have to learn to go back before you can go forward. That's a common theme in Spain. Like, you can't just go and attack the first shot. You have to move back on the defense and then build towards the offense. And so they develop, a patience and a willingness to counterpunch, and they teach even aggressive players that sometimes you need to defend.
Yeah. And this is clay comes into the picture here, because if you are going to learn to defend, it's going to be more straightforward to learn how to defend on a clay court, right?
Yeah, for sure. But you can defend on any surface, but particularly clay, the defense is more helpful, more successful. But in Spain, they've also implemented a lot of hardcore training. When I first was traveling in Spain, you didn't see that many hard courts at the academies. Now every academy has hard courts, and they are training players more on the rise, stronger court position. They're cleaning up the technique. The technique is not as wild, or big loops, big, huge Western grips. The technique's getting cleaner in Spain, slowly but surely. And the players are playing with more discipline and taking the ball earlier. This has happened the last 20 years in Spain. They're very much trying to compete on all surfaces in Spain, very similar to what Italy's doing. Italy's doing the same thing now, and Italy's had a lot of success.
I think we'll come on to Italy in a bit, won't we? But yeah, come on. So the next pillar, you got to tell us, the 5th one.
The 5th pillar is physical superiority. And that gets back to the first theme we talked about, which is the hard work aspect. They're just, the Spanish players are animals in the gym, off the court. It's just a part of being a tennis player, spending a couple hours or more in the gym, off the court each day, on the track, doing injury prevention, working on stamina, working on getting stronger. It's basically, this is something that happened in the pro game in the 80s and 90s. We had players like Ivan Lendl, some of the Spanish players, Jim Courier, I don't know if you remember these guys, who changed the way that pro players were training in terms of off-court conditioning. And Spain was on the vanguard of this trend historically. They whether it was from Pato Alvarez or Luis Bruguera, it could have been, it's definitely from both of those guys, who they were the leaders at that time. They were the most famous and most influential coaches in Spain. And those guys believed in being physically superior, to never lose a match from fitness, and to be the most fit player in every tournament. And they pushed very hard. The drills were very intensive and demanding. Both those coaches believed in that. Luis Bruguera he studied Hopman, the famous Australian coach, Harry Hopman. And Hopman was also known for his grueling workouts and his insistence on physical superiority. So the Spanish actually stole that from Hopman and Australia, that philosophy. And now I would argue, I'll allude to Italy again. I believe Italy has stolen that from Spain, and they have embraced that same approach, the idea that they need to be physically superior in terms of fitness, and with great results too. So that, I think, is essential for any system, any methodology. In today's age, where we have cutting edge science driving fitness and physical conditioning and off-court training. Everybody's got a trainer now. It's absolutely essential to be a top player now. And if you're a young kid, if you're training young kids, you got to get them into that. You have to get them to take that seriously, because a lot of kids just like to hit balls.
And how do you do that, Chris? So, because I get it, man. Like, there's a lot of strength and conditioning coaches. There's obviously the likes of Sinner, who can go and Alcaraz and all these players, and we know it's that Spanish way. But like, how do you at your club get those junior players to take that strength and conditioning side of things seriously? What percentage of their time as developing as a tennis player, what percentage of their time are they working on their fitness so they can be that animal?
Yeah, in Spain, they were one of the first countries and systems and methods to go almost 50-50, almost 50% off the court, 50% tennis training. So that means they actually play less tennis per day and per week than other countries, but they do a lot off the court. It can be 60-40 sometimes, but you're talking a typical training day in Spain. I talk about this in the book. It's 3 hours of tennis, maybe 3.5, 3 hours and 15 minutes, and maybe 2 hours, 2.5 off-court fitness work. And that's not all, it's a mix of different things: injury prevention, speed and agility, strength training in the gym, things like that. And so that like, for example, you develop that in children in many different ways. I work with many young kids. A lot of them just don't have the tolerance for the gym. They don't have a passion for working out, and you have to slowly build that. I run a high performance camp here in the summer. And it starts with blocking out the day that way. You say, we're going to do an hour and a half or 2 hours of tennis, and then we're going to go do an hour and a half of conditioning. It starts with just the scheduling and saying, this is what we do. This is our commitment, And oftentimes it also comes with motivation and inspiration, setting a good example as a coach. I'm a fitness fanatic myself. So it helps to have a role model leading, a coach. You got to set the example for the kids around you. If you're an animal, then your kids will learn that same mentality in the gym or off the court in terms of just physical stuff. And I just try to explain. I try to just talk to children, and I say, look, if you want to be a pro, if you want to be a high level player, this is part of the deal. It's not just about tennis anymore. All the elite players are doing this stuff off the court. You have to start getting into this. And if the kid's just not ready emotionally or mature in terms of their maturation, you know, some kids at 9, 10, and 11, they're just not that serious off the court, and you have to just slowly and progressively work on them until they get more mature. And you try to expose them to gym and injury prevention and taking care of their bodies like a professional. That's how you do it.
So, Chris, fascinating. The sixth pillar, and you know, as you've said, these are the pillars that you explore in the book. If anyone's interested, get a copy. You'll find out a whole lot more. But what is the sixth pillar?
So this is every reader's favorite chapter. I think it's a chapter on suffering, and the suffering is a word that they use in Spain. And it was remarkable to me because I traveled all over the country, different academies, and studied with many of the famous coaches there. And you heard the same word, suffering. And I didn't know what to think at first. I thought, this is crazy. They teach all the young kids, they talk to them and say, you need to suffer. You need to learn how to suffer. You need to love to suffer. You need to develop your suffering. And you hear it all around the country. It's really fascinating, just how the culture, the tennis culture, embraces that concept. And so that is a huge part of the hard work ethic in Spain, the willingness to sacrifice in Spain, the fighting spirit. You know, people always talk about Spanish players, how they're fighters and they're always tough in the third set or the fifth set. And it's really true. And they start teaching that at a young age. They say, you want to come play tennis? You're going to need to suffer on the red clay out here. You're going to need to get dirty. You're going to need to dive for balls. You're going to need to sweat, and it's going to be painful, and you're going to have to suffer to win. And so when every coach at every club saying that, the young kids who play tennis, they develop a mindset that's pretty tough.
I mean, when I think back to, you know, British tennis and say 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and, you know, you'd go to La Manga to train, and La Manga is, you know, like a holiday resort. It's a holiday resort. That's what it is. It's not an academy like the academies we're talking about. The suffering, you know, as an advert over here, like as a coach, if I was to put out, come suffer at our tennis club, you know, parents be like, you know, what's going on? But I hear you. Like, I think we got our start time wrong at the Ferreros Academy, and we turned up and it was morning, but it was already very, very hot. And the boys checked in to start, and it was like, right, you're late 3 laps of this circuit, you know. I guess it's character building, but ultimately it comes down to work ethic. Is that what suffering really means? Is it's into that work ethic, as work hard in life, work hard in tennis, you're more likely to get more success along the way.
It's related to work ethic. It's also along the line, it connects with work ethic, but it's also about enduring pain. That's another word that's very common in Spain, endurance. So Rafa talks about that a lot, how he learned to endure. He learned in his career that he learned to love suffering. And he really believes that. Like, a lot of players from Spain really believe that. Like, the worse the match gets, it's a mindset. The worse the conditions are, the longer the match goes, the hotter it is, like you talked about, the better. The more suffering, the better. Joffrey Porta, the famous Spanish coach, says suffering is a privilege. When you suffer, it's a privilege, not something. It's something that it means that at the end the match is going to be better for you. You're gonna enjoy the win even more. You know, it's just they flip the whole thing around, and you would be wise if you advertise suffering in your program. You differentiate yourself over there in Great Britain, Rob. Come on.
To be fair, like, it's freezing cold. It's snowing. The snow's coming down. You'll be like, come suffer. And to be fair, like, to be absolutely fair, when it is raining and you keep playing, joy comes out the other end. So I do get it. You know, like, from suffering can come joy.
Yes, that's what Joffrey Porta says. He's a great coach, by the way. He's a tough, strict disciplinarian. He's brilliant. He's in Mallorca, so a lot of players go to the well-known Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, which is a little more of a country club for a holiday place to visit like La Manga. But for the kids that are really serious and who want to suffer, they should go train with Joffre in Mallorca near Palma, because he is a strict disciplinarian. And yeah, he says that exactly. He's alluding to what you said psychologically. When you are suffering and you endure and you come out the other side of it, it's an incredible feeling, a positive feeling, and it's a privilege to go through something like that. Most kids do not see it that way. They hate it. They make excuses, and they want to get out of that feeling as soon as possible. They don't want to stay in it.
And the difference between, a country club style vibe, and I know at Rafa they have some very elite players too,
Yeah.
but there is that country vibe for the ones who are turning up for a week-long holiday. I see questions a lot on forums, parent forums, coach forums, and the question is, we're interested in going to Spain. Where should we go? So, if for families who are thinking they can do a week or 10 days, 2 weeks of training, as a man who knows this better than anyone, I would think, where should they be heading?
I think I really do have a good knowledge because of just the travels that I've done. And we have a chapter of that in the book. I have a chapter of the leading Spanish academies that I recommend that I think are good. And I'd rather not pinpoint just one, but what I would like to say, and I get this question all the time. I advise parents and families all the time. They just reach out to me. They read the book and they want to know what I recommend for their kid, and I just help them. I send many, many players to Spain, my own players and just players who reached out to me. And you really just have to find the right match for your kid. So Rafa Nadal Academy has really high level training. Like you said, there's different levels. They have a program that's more of a holiday kind of deal where the kids are not that serious, especially in the summertime. And there are other academies that are the same, but if you're an elite player and you want to get the top training, they have a program for that as well. Juan Carlos Ferreros Academy is very similar. They have more of a catch-all program for the kids who are maybe not as competitive or serious, and then they have this amazing elite program. So sometimes you have to be careful because a place, you may know that Carlos Alcaraz trains at Juan Carlos Ferreros Academy, the Ferrero Tennis Academy. Rob, did your kids go to Ferrer or Ferrero?
Ferrer. So just near Alicante.
Yeah, David Ferrer's Academy is not far from there either. But Ferrero, Juan Carlos Ferrero's Academy is very, very famous now because Alcaraz grew up and trained there. And so I've been there many times, and they have an incredible pro program. Like if you're a pro, high-level teenager, it's unbelievable. And then for sometimes the younger ones who want to come and train like that, they don't actually have the offering for that. The program is much more light, in more of even more like a recreational focus. And then as the kids, so you have to look very carefully at the program. For example, a lot of the programs in Spain don't have great offerings for girls, for female players, for young girls. You have to pick very carefully if you have a daughter, because a lot of the programs have boys, lots of boys, teenage boys. A lot of the programs in Spain have very strong teenage programs for teenage boys and not many for girls. There's definitely some to watch out for. So when parents contact me, I steer them into the places that I know very well. And I would also caution parents that there are now in Spain more than ever before. When I first started going to Spain, it was so real. Like the vibe there was so authentic. And a lot of the places didn't even care about money, really. It wasn't a commercial environment. And that's changed a lot in the last 20 years. There are a lot of academies now that are very high priced, and they've gone corporate, and they are charging a lot of money, and it has a very commercial vibe where it really wasn't like that back in the day. Certainly not in the 90s and the early 2000s. It was a very cool vibe, 20 or more years ago, and that has changed a lot. And so you have to be careful because there are places now in Spain trying to take advantage of the reputation of Spain and offering, I think, mediocre training, and just under the allure of Spanish tennis. And you really want to try to stick with the tried and true programs that are time proven. They've developed a lot of good players, and and they have the right type of program for your particular player. Another thing is young players. There's a lot of programs in Spain. If you have a young kid, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, it's really hard to find good training for young players in Spain. Spain definitely caters, in my opinion, it does a better job with older teenagers, who are more well-formed. And we talked about that because they tend not to teach a lot of highly precise technique to young kids. That they do, I think, a much better job inheriting kids who have a much better, they spent a few years somewhere else getting their technical training, and then, being the finishing school for those kids. I think that's a better way to utilize Spain.
It's really fascinating, firstly, that in the past it was more passion driven than money driven. I'm sure in a lot of examples it still is, that the passion is what comes first rather than the money. But it sounds like, in a way, like, there's also the need for the Spanish academies to adapt to the world as it is and as it should be. The example of female players, of course the offer should be exactly the same for female players as it is for the lads. Is Spanish tennis moving forward at the pace it needs to, Chris? Or is there the danger that they will become the has-beens, and that will come onto it? Italy and other countries are going to be the future.
Yeah, it's a really interesting discussion, and I've been calling out the alarm for a long time. I wrote an article for a tennis magazine, I think for Florida Tennis, where I talked about how Spain needs to make changes to compete better, maybe going back to 2016, 2017. Emilio Sanchez has he made a very powerful, wrote an essay in a recent blog talking about just this topic. I included the essay in my book, actually. He gave me permission. Emilio Sanchez wrote the foreword for my book, along with Luis Bugera. And he gave me permission to publish the essay, where he basically criticizes the Spanish academies for focusing too much on profit and foreign players. This is coming from Emilio. And he says the federation needs to do a better job promoting and growing the grassroots, basically the native-born Spanish players in Spain. So there is definitely some issues in Spain right now, and I think they're not competing as well as they could. And we could go over some of the reasons why. But so I think it's a very important discussion, and I think that Spain, you can see by the numbers in the top 100, they're down. They're down compared to Italy. They are down compared to France. They are down compared to Australia. France has the most players in the top 100 right now. I made a post recently where we went into the top 100 players in the world as of November, and France had 13 or 14, and Spain had, I think, 6. And France has done a very consistent job developing top players. Italy had 8, I believe, in the last count. It fluctuates, so the number changes from month to month and week to week. So Italy's doing great. Australia had 8 or 9, and France was actually the best. France had the position that Spain used to have in terms of dominating, although they haven't had any Grand Slam winners. So that's sort of that's the catch with France.
Now, clearly, Chris, like, it's a different episode, the secrets of French tennis and Italian tennis, but it's clearly something you've researched.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on one important thing that's happening in Spain. So their native-born players are down a bit, but they become the go-to place for foreign players, to foreign professional high-level players. So they've made an interesting segue, interesting transition into a place. They're not developing the elite, the most elite Spanish players anymore. They're not competing as well as Italy at the moment, or Australia or France, but there's a ton of players foreign that you wouldn't realize. They all train in Spain, like Rublev, like Kachanov, like Xin Wen. There's a lot of players either train in Spain, live in Spain, and dozens and dozens of top pros travel with Spanish coaches. So the influence is there, but people have to see past just the number of Spanish players right now in the top 100 and realize that Spain is basically the premier training ground for foreigners right now, especially in Europe.
So Spain's become, as well as producing its own players, it's producing other players from other countries using the Spanish system. Has your research shown any reasons why, for example, Italy is doing so well at the moment? I know we touched on it before we hit the record button that the system has, to a degree, they've stolen with glee and taken the strengths of the Spanish system and built upon it.
I think I want to write about this. I'll probably write an article, or I don't know if it'll be a book someday, but it's a really interesting story how Italy, it's a similar size to Spain. They have about 10 million more people. They have the red clay. They're in the Mediterranean. They're not far up the coast from Barcelona, and they're doing great. They've taken, and I don't, whatever word you want to use, stolen, borrowed, adapted, that's what countries do. It's a worldwide competition between federations and countries. They're all competing against each other to produce top 100 players, to produce Grand Slam champions. So it makes total sense that they would try to learn from Spain. Italy, Piatti is one of the most famous Italian coaches, and he's readily admitted that he's taken many of the philosophies and methods from Spain. And if you read about his teaching system, there are some of the main tenets of his teachings, the main planks are directly from the. You could just copy and paste from my book. You know, receiving the ball between the hip and shoulder. That's something that they've talked about in Spain since the 1970s, and that's a main plank in the Piatti method in Italy. You know, moving well, footwork based, consistency from the baseline. That's all Piatti. You know. Playing with margin and shape and consistency. It's all Piatti. And so the Italians have taken a lot of that, and but like on a larger level in terms of infrastructure and grassroots and the way the federation operates, they've also done a number of things there. In terms of opportunities at the pro level, they developed a whole network of futures and professional tournaments in Italy, very similar to the structure that Spain had that led to Spain's success. So on a number of different fronts, not just the teaching method, but in terms of the infrastructure and the grassroots promotion of tennis in Italy, they've taken a lot of cues from Spain. And I think they're competing very well with Spain. And in many ways, they may be the next Spain. You know, one of the things, the big thing in Italy that Spain is falling way behind is using science and technology to help their athletes. Piatti is huge on using video analysis. Piatti is huge on using cutting edge mental training. And that's something you just don't see a lot in Spain. And I said this for years. I've criticized Spain and said, guys, you can't just coach by feel in a world that's embracing technology and science. You have to adapt. And they haven't, except for a few academies. Juan Carlos Ferreros Academy is very cutting edge in terms of using science and technology. Rafa Nadal Academy is another one that's adapting very quickly. But many of the traditional programs in Spain, I feel, are going to be left behind by competitors like Piatti. Is a great example because Piatti is doing everything that Spain's doing, and he's using science and technology and cutting edge tools. Analytics, you know, you don't really see that in Spain. So that, I think, is the reason why Spain's not competing as well. That's part of it. And part of it's just how long can you be on top forever? You know, for 30, 40 years. I mean, Spain was very lucky to have Alcaraz. If Alcaraz had not arrived, the story would be that Spain's way down. But Alcaraz is incredible, and he's hopefully going to bring back, you know, a lot of Spanish players into the mix.
I love the bit about technology. You know, Swing Vision is a technology, you know, that you'll have come across. It's where you can put an iPhone or an iPad on the back of the court, and it gives you really good video. And that is available over here, free of charge to coaches who have got Accreditation Plus. It's kind of LTA thing. I don't think I've seen anyone using it. Like, I use it, but mine was more community tennis, really. I don't think I've seen anyone use it, and it's free. And you've got a phone, and you put your phone on the fence, and you do video. You know, is that the sort of technologies you're bringing into your coaching, Chris?
Absolutely. So I'm also embracing technology. I have a new book on biomechanics called Winning Pretty. It's coming out next year. And one of the major thrusts in that book is how we need to embrace an evidence-based approach to teaching technique. We need to embrace research. We need to use video to all of the tech. There's so many technologies. Even AI now is incredible. There's so many new technologies. And I just personally believe that if you don't embrace those as a coach, if you don't embrace research and if you don't use evidence, you're just going to fall behind eventually. You know, you can compete for only so long until there's the sophistication of coaching, the sophistication of training is the brave new world that we live in now. You have to embrace these technologies and learn them. You have to get through the learning curve, and that's what the great coaches of the future are going to be doing. So Spain is not doing that. So I think that's going to be a real challenge for them. And that's one of the reasons why we talked about how they don't do a lot of technique and biomechanics there. If you're not taking a video, you're not working. How are you going to work on biomechanics? You know, just like you said, we use Swing Vision here. It's great.
Yeah. Come on, and why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you get a helping hand from technology? It just makes total sense. Chris, we're coming towards the end of our time. It's been so good to chat. I mean, one of the things that we get a lot of tennis parents listening. I'm a tennis parent. You know, the children are all competing in one way or another. You must have come across a lot of tennis parents, both in the States and in Spain. What's your guidance to tennis parents on how to do the best they can as a tennis parent?
Okay, I recently did one of my own podcasts on this subject. I'm very passionate about this subject. I do work with so many parents. I work as a team with parents. I love working with parents. I embrace parents. But if you have a kid and he wants to be great, he or she wants to be great, there's a couple of things that you need. Three things, actually. You need good training. So training is high quality practice. So you need structurally, you need to set up good practice, and you need to train a lot of volume. There's a big debate how much volume, but you need to have high quality practice. That's number one. You need to have coaching, a mentor, a guide, someone to inspire your kid and guide them technically, tactically, to shape and to mentor and bring a kid along, because the journey is so hard. And when you have someone who's been there, who's knowledgeable and passionate and inspiring, it helps a lot. It really helps a lot for your child on the journey. And then the third part is you need to have competition. You need to have very, very good competition. That means you enter in tournaments that are challenging, and you play a lot of matches, and you put your child in challenging situations where they can grow as a competitor mentally and emotionally. And when you have all three of those things right, it's like magic. You have those three things. They are greater than their sum, you know. And many times I am in junior development. I train many national champions here in the US. This is what I love. This is my wheelhouse. In my experience, the kids who are underperforming are always missing one of those three, or sometimes two of those three. And when you have all three of them, it's like rocket fuel. You come together, and the player can overachieve rather than underperform. And Pato Alvarez, he's a real jokester. This comes from Pato Alvarez, by the way, because he says these three things, and I've adapted them a little bit. He's quite a comedian. He says the fourth thing you need to make all these things happen is you need money. Get the great coach, to get all the pay, you got to pay for all that training, and parents know that it's expensive to travel to all the tournaments. You know, it's going to take you got to have resources to make it happen. If you don't, you're going to have to, figure out whether you get funding get help, you get a sponsor, you get a federation, or you squirrel money away. You're going to need some resources to get that whole triangle to happen. And usually, if one of those things is missing, the player is struggling in some respects. And that's my experience. And that's what I would first tell parents before anything else. Try to get that overall structure of the junior development in place, and then you can work from there. Obviously, there's a lot of details and intricacies that are involved there as well. But
I reckon a lot of parents were nodding their heads sort of like approvingly and like, yeah, totally understand, bang on. And then with the money thing, they're like, where have my savings gone? I used to have dreams of retirement homes in sunny places, and now it's all gone on the tennis training.
Yeah, but many times sometimes I help families who don't have the resources, and I get all these stories about how they're not able to do one of those three things. And maybe they don't have the money to travel to tournaments, so the kid's not playing tournaments, or maybe they can't afford an elite coach, so the kid's not getting that mentoring. Or maybe the groups in their area are expensive, so they have to do two groups instead of four, you know? So this is a common theme in junior development. But the reality is the bottom line, if you're missing one of those three or two of those three, your kid's gonna struggle. You have to try to make that whole thing happen to get complete development, to get optimal development, you know? You're gonna have a frustrated kid and you're gonna have results that are suboptimal without that. You have to figure it
I
out.
think I think that's why the parents invest, isn't it? Is because there is that realization that you take the training away, you take the mentor away, you take the competition at the right level away, you take one of those building blocks away, and the whole house might crumble. So I think it's really good advice. I'm sure people will really appreciate it. Chris, we've it's been so good talking. As someone who started out studying Spanish tennis through your book, through your videos, taking that to my the lessons that I used to do a lot more of. I'm more in the parenting stage now. But I mean, I massively appreciate it. And for any coaches, parents who are interested, please do look up the secrets of Spanish tennis. It's been updated with a load more information in there around Alcaraz, loads more drills, lots of, as you've heard, amazing content. So please do look that up. I'll make sure there's loads of links there. But Chris, there's a question we ask everyone who comes onto the podcast, and I'd love to finish with that one, and that is, if you could go for a drink with anyone, alive or dead, who would it be and why?
It's a great question. Obviously, there's a lot of people. In terms of Spanish tennis, it's really sad that Pato Alvarez passed away. He was very old and he had an incredible life, and he has so many amazing stories. I didn't get as much time to study with him as Luis Bruguera. I spent much more time with Luis Bruguera personally. And so I would love to just sit with Pato Alvarez and have him share his stories of not only the tour, but the early years of Spanish tennis in the 70s and 80s, where Spain was not a powerful, dominant country. And they, like you said, they didn't have a lot of money. And how did he do it? How did he create this armada of players along with Luis Bruguera? Incredible stories. The other person who I think is incredible from Spain is Tony Nadal, and the experiences and stories that he has from basically raising up one of the greatest champions ever in tennis must be amazing. And Tony Nadal has the most incredible character building system. Like, if you had a child and you wanted to just steer them the right way with good values and good character development, you should study some of the teachings of Tony Nadal, because your kid will be raised in a good way and will have a very strong character and value system. This new book actually has a chapter on Tony's teachings, and I talk a lot about Tony Nadal, which I didn't talk about in the first book. And I think for that reason, I think it's really important, his character development system.
Hey, I'd love to. Oh, well, I can't wait to read that and find out all about it. And out of interest, when you were, back to that crusade that you went on, when you got on that plane and you headed over to Spain and you visited the academies, and you're sitting by that court, you're watching Pato Alvarez's sessions, you're going and you're meeting. Did people have a cerveza at the end of play? Did you sit down and have a beer with these guys?
Well, I don't drink, so I didn't sit down and have a beer, but I like Vichy Catalan, which is it's a bubbly mineral water from Spain. It's my favorite. So yes, I may have sat down and had a Vichy with them. And certainly the Spanish coaches do like to have a drink after their practices, or a cafe, so yes, for sure.
Mate, I love it. I love it. And I'm so pleased I got to have a tennis chapter in my life, but I absolutely love what you did. And what the result, the journey you've been on from simply having a passion, but following that passion, not just talking about it, getting on it. What an amazing journey. And it's culminated with, the release of the updated volume, and all the very best with it. And thanks so much to explaining to myself and everyone listening about the secrets of Spanish tennis.
Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Your show's great, and wish all the listeners the best.
That's all for today, but thank you very much for listening. And if you enjoyed that, please do hit the subscribe or follow button so you keep up to date with new episodes. And we look forward to welcoming you back to my tennis journey very soon.